Hi, and welcome back to Crank It Up. I'm Sarah Traeger here with Jim Price.
Hey Sarah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the top 16 seeds in the March Smashness tournament.
Exactly, I'm really excited to talk about these factions.
This has been a really exciting event so far. Let's jump right into the second half. All right, so right off the bat, our 16th seed was Elder Things and Time Travelers.
This is a really interesting combination because the time travelers have a lot of weaknesses. One of the problems is that they lack an action that is worth repeating or a minion that's worth repeating. But the Elder Things can bury people in madness, and that can really lead to a lot of madness spamming. You don't have to win every base. All you have to do is make sure that your opponent is losing a lot of points, and you really handicap people.
Very interesting. I like that strategy. The Elder Things are one of my favorite factions. All right, the next seed is number 15, All Star Ghosts, which sounds like a really fun set of factions to play.
So one of the ghost problems is that they need an ability to play your hand very quickly and thin out your hand. The All-Stars can actually play more than half of their actions in a single turn and play additional minions as well. So they can get some really big plays which the ghosts are going to love. They also have a little bit of everything, searching and recursion and extra minion plays. There's a lot to like about this combination. You can play a ton of cards and then draw them all back up with either your ghost card or square deal from the All-Star deck. This combination, I've played it, it's a lot of fun.
Nice. All right, this was also Vespert's top pick. And he says that it's a very fast deck cycle and you can quickly get to your best cards. There's also a lot of extra card plays, and you can empty your hand without needing to discard very often. For example, he references the double ghostly arrivals. And then he also says that there are several good synergies, and he specifically mentions Sprout plus the Spirit Haunting, the Dead Rise plus King Rex. King Rex is an awesome card. Shady Deal plus It's Astounding, the Servitor of Cthulhu and the Non-Infinite Loop, and then Door to the Beyond plus the Full Moon.
So I agree with everything that he says, but I'd also like to point out that he's very anti-smash up and pie, so that invalidates everything that he said.
I'm sure that that's how it works.
That's exactly how it works.
All right, so our number 14 seed is Cyborg Ape Princesses, which sounds, oh, it just paints a picture in your head, doesn't it?
So I like both of these two factions independently, but I also like them together. One of the problems with the baboons is that they typically want to play all their actions on one, and having multiple minions with the talent doesn't make sense because you're going to have less actions to power up for your ultimate juiced up flying monkey. But the princesses have the 3 heirlooms that get powerful the more that they have on it. So I like how you can have 2 different bases, one where you have the flying monkey, one where you have the heirloom. Now, it does put more emphasis on your actions rather than your minions, but I think that these two are really powerful, and if you can get to Cyberback, it's probably going to be game over.
All right, well, this was Smash Up Savant's bottom pick, and he said, I put Cyborg Ape Princesses in the bottom spot since the two factions don't have much overlapping synergy, and the lack of minion plays puts additional pressure on your action play for the turn. It's an interesting point.
So I am agreeing with him about the additional pressure, but I think that the Cyborg Apes were never really about their minions anyway, and I'd rather have the Cyborg Apes are about having a few really good minions, and so are the princesses. And as long as you're maximizing your action plays, I think this one is going to do pretty well.
All right, very cool. All right, seed 13 is the ancient Egyptian werewolves, which again, I feel like this paints quite a picture. This seems like a literary universe just waiting to be explored.
Well, this is the Anubis faction because Anubis is the jackal, and I guess the werewolves would be the closest thing to it. And I'm saying that because I'm a big fan of Anubis, which I may have admitted to in the past. I really like this faction. I think the werewolves are perfect for the burying strategy. Once I saw the ancient Egyptians, werewolves immediately came to my mind because they're all about power on your turn, and the ancient Egyptians let you delay when you're actually going to do it. So you bury a howler and you uncover it for +4 power. This combination just works so naturally well, particularly with marking territory. Oh yes, I happen to be winning the base. It's going to score immediately at the start of my turn. Now I'm going to focus on shredding you off of the base. I love this combination. I'm glad to see that they made it in the top half.
Nice. Okay, on to our number 12 pick. This is going to be a very interesting combination, in my opinion, the Shark Truckers.
So everyone talks about Sharknado because it gives the sharks the movement they need to move to a base, then move back and kill someone. I think the truckers could actually do that in a more renewable one because they're transferring the action with it. The truckers will also bring a little bit more power and a little bit more card draw to the twisters. I think it's just a little bit more solid and a little bit more predictable. I really like the truckers, and not just because El Bandito, my nickname, is the King Minion. I think there's a lot to like about this faction. I think it's evident by how highly they were placed.
Yeah, this one seems like it would be a really fun grouping to play. All right, the number 11 seed is Disco Dancer Itty Critters.
So there's a funny story behind this. I basically made 31 of the teams and had 2 left, Disco Dancers and Itty Critters. And it's like, well, I don't want to change the teams, so this is just going to have to happen. And I didn't think it was going to be that good until I really thought about it. And that's why I made my list for, top unexpected pairings with my Odd Couples video. Because of Dancing King, the Itty Critters have a lot of indirect ways of affecting someone that the Dancing King can copy and turn this into a very kill-happy deck. Now, it can go really well or it can go really poorly because it does require the Dancing King's presence, and I think that's why there was a lot of debate on where this one should actually fit.
Yeah, this is actually one person's top pick and another person's bottom pick. So Turing Jedi had said that this was his top pick because Disco Dancers are a strong, well-rounded faction, and Itty Critters don't do much to hinder the Disco Dancers. However, it was Vespert's bottom pick and Vespert's greatest deviation at number 32. And Vespert had said, both decks go in different directions. Disco Dancers want longing board presence, while Itty Critters burst on their turn, then deflate on others. Neither deck brings the other what they want. Rollers and Divas aren't good targets for the Itty Critters because they want to remain in play. None of the Itty Critter standard actions are worth copying into your own minions, and most of the Itty Critter extra minion plays are temporary. Some cards aren't as effective for the other faction. Staying Alive can only target Critter Coach. Disco Dancers have several card draws, which is bad as you increase the chances of pulling your Power 2 minions out of the deck. The Itty Critter minions are the main tools for effects, but Disco Dancers can't copy minion abilities. He wraps up by saying some synergies, but he's not sure that there are enough to balance out the previous points, that the Itty Critter pocket minions make good direct targets for your standard actions, and the Itty Critter standard actions are worth copying into your opponent's minions with Dancing King and We Are Family.
So I agree with a lot of what he's saying, and I think that there is a lot that can go wrong, and yes, ordinarily you'd want the Itty Critters to have a better synergy with their twos. But you have to remember that the Disco Dancers by themselves are individually very strong, and they can carry a partner faction. I just see the Itty Critters being a little bit of support, and if you can just get the right burst at the right time, Dancing King will help slow the game down until you get to that point.
Our number 10 seed is the Geek Elves. Now this was one person's top pick and another person's bottom pick, and this was also someone's standard deviation as well. But let's get your take on it before we jump into that.
So I think the elves are a little bit of an unknown in terms of how great they actually are. Probably because in the Munchkin set, people will overlook them. They're actually incredibly powerful and extremely unorthodox to play, as are the geeks. This one is a total wild card because you really don't know what the opponent is going to do because it's so much about messing with your own plans and trying to create opportunities. I understand both parts of what people are saying. I just happen to think that this one is going to be pretty strong, not just because the geeks and the elves are individually strong, but because they're impossible to predict what people are trying to do. You're almost intentionally trying to lose until you're not.
All right, so like I said, this was one player's top pick, and that was Smash Up Savant. And he said that the geeks offer multiple ways to thwart your opponent's plans during their turn, which few factions can boast. And the elves also have plenty of ways to manipulate power on a base before it scores. This was Sonus's bottom pick and his greatest deviation, and he said that the Geek Elves was the worst for me as they won't have hardly any board presence. They won't be able to really start up for future plays or compete very often for a single base. I expect hardly any burst opportunities, and the way they mess people up won't be bad enough since they don't have the burst to take advantage of hurting them.
So I see a lot of what he's saying, but I think that if you can get the opponent to play their own factions incorrectly, you can create the opportunities that Sonus doesn't expect will be there. Things like Felicia Day moving all the minions to one base, that makes for a great runaway play when you can pull all your guys off of it and get an easy second place on a base that's 4-3-2. Like I said, you have to envision your opportunities and create them, but I think that this is going to be a lot of fun to play.
I think this would be an interesting game to watch as well. All right, moving right along. Our number 9 seed is the Shapeshifting Dragons, which in my mind conjures up like the kung fu movies where people shapeshift into a dragon and fight while they're, I don't know.
So I'm not gonna lie, this is Breath of Fire, the video game series. If you've ever played it, there is always a shape-shifting dragon, at least one. And that was pretty much the reason why this faction was created. I just view these as two solid, great factions that really work well into each other. I like Gelfing into a Wyvern for an unexpected base breaking and minion destruction. I think that the dragons can make life really difficult for people, and the shapeshifters can just use their power against other people. This is not going to be fun to play against, which is why it's going to be incredibly fun to play.
Are you playing that faction?
No, because unless they advance, I'm only playing underdogs. Not every underdog, but this is the top half, so it's unlikely I'm going to play them.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. All right. Our number 8 seed is the Mythic Horse Fairies, which sounds like, just based on theme alone, will be very synergistic.
Yeah, these are two from the same set, which we tried to avoid as much as possible, but this one was good to pair because the Mythic Horses, they don't really have a lot of weaknesses. They can do a little bit of everything. They have movement, they have specials, they have extra plays and power increases, and the Fairies just help fill in the blank by giving you a little bit of extra plays, a little bit of unpredictability. You wanted something that wouldn't make the Mythic Horses too strong, but Fairies still bring them up to another level. This is one of the few combinations I liked in the Pure when I did my expansion purchase guide, and I really just have a lot of good thoughts about this faction.
Nice. We'll see what happens. The number 7 seed is the Astro Ninjas, and this was one player's top pick. But before we jump into that, let's hear your thoughts.
So the Astro Knights are great because they can increase a lot of power. They have a lot of minions that they want to play in advance, something that the ninjas lack, and they have a little bit of specials. The ninjas also have a lot of specials, and I like how this faction, particularly in 2-player, can compete on every turn, even when it's not your turn. They can throw a Shinobi, they can throw in the Chewbacca card that lets them play an extra action if they're not winning, so you can play that, then you can play your Shinobi, then you can play Hidden Ninja and take someone else out. You can literally do all the work in phase 3 on someone else's turn and steal a base, and I think that potential shows why they're so high on the list.
Well, it looks like Kilburn agrees with you. It's his top pick, and he says that the Astro Ninjas also have great on-play abilities to kill enemies, great talents, great specials during scoring.
Yeah, I agree with everything that he said.
All right, fantastic. Moving on to number 6 is the Mythic Greek Teddybears. This is a strange combination, I think.
Yes, but it works, and it was actually your tournament where I suggested this to someone and ultimately regretted it because I ended up playing against him. In the one game where I got second place, which was unfortunate, wanted to win out entirely, but this is just annoying on so many levels because the Mythic Greeks have annoyance because they're doing really well and they're spamming favor of D, and the Teddy Bears are just annoying in every other regard. And it's funny because the Mythic Greeks have the potential to be the most powerful minion, but if you overtake them, the Teddy Bears can kill the most powerful minion. So it's a little bit of unexpectedness. They can also get better card draw because of the Teddy Bears. They can slow the game down, which gives the Mythic Greeks more time to get to their higher tier minions. They just really complement each other well. I'm not surprised that they are this high up because I remember how annoying they were to play.
Very nice. All right, coming in at number 5 is the Kung Fu Fighter Dinosaurs.
I really like this combination for a number of reasons. I think that being able to play King Rex with Fast as Lightning to get a 9 power that you can instantly get back to your hand when the base is scoring is great. This is all about power and destruction. The Kung Fu Fighters very often care about having a minion with a certain power amount, which the dinosaurs naturally bring. Kung Fu Fighters can do a little bit of everything. They're going to really like the idea of the dinosaurs bringing in the power. I like how the dinosaurs can increase power without giving power counters, which makes things really good for the Lady Whirlwind. That could turn it into a really powerful destruction card that's a repeatable talent, and I just like so much about these two together.
Yeah, this seems like it would be a challenge to face head on. All right, this is also Chucky's Cookie's greatest deviation at number 30, and he said, lastly, the results for Kung Fu Dinosaurs are very interesting. This is a combination that gave me trouble judging. The reason I rank them so low is similar to the one for Kaiju Innsmouth. Both factions are okay, but not great, and they don't have a great synergy. Kung Fu Fighters are an alright faction that has its strengths, but having no power counters and no talents for expert timing, dinosaurs don't help them. They'll only be really good if they can steal power counters from an opponent. Dinosaurs have a lot of raw power, but they're slow. I think that if they're best paired with a faction that has card draw and/or extra plays. Kung Fu Fighters barely offer that, and they're a rather slow faction themselves. In total, I think that the combination lacks speed compared to most others on the list. The other combinations either have one faction that's really strong or a good synergy, and I don't really see either with these two. Admittedly, I mostly play 3-player out of playtesting and don't have much experience with them in 2-player games. I had to think a lot about their combined destruction power. Maybe they can slow down an opponent good enough to make up for their own lack of speed. Most likely that's the reason that makes others rank them so high. Seeing those results, I might have underestimated the impact of the destruction. It was a close decision, and they may be better than I thought, but I don't see them in the upper half by any means, so I'm amazed by the 2 people that rank them second. I'm really curious as to how they'll be doing now.
So, yeah, they do have a potential for a lot of weaknesses, but he's right when he says that 2-player will give them more time, and you have to draw something. One of the interesting things about factions that require card draw is that they still have some cards to play, and whether you draw dinosaurs or Kung Fu Fighters, those 2 factions work well by themselves. It's where you draw a little bit of each that's going to be a problem, but because of the types of cards that those 2 have, a little bit is either going to be towards the solution that you want, or it's going to slow down the game until you get the other cards that you need. And I think this is going to end up being a really good pairing.
Interesting. We'll see how it plays out. Our number 4 seed is Rockstar Tornadoes. I feel like if Eric were introducing this one, he would make some kind of pun about guitar licks being lightning fast or something like that, but I'm not him, so let's move along.
So I love the Rockstars. They're one of my favorite factions. They've won me actually 2 tournaments, and I'm always going to want to bet on them. One of the things about Tornadoes is that they add even more specials to what the Rockstars already have. The Rockstars can do a little bit of everything. They can't really destroy minions, but they do have a little bit of movement, and the Tornadoes give them even more movement, which gives them more time to set up their Rockstar engine. I really like how you can repeat Monarch and move them to a different base. That way, when you use all your groupies, you can continue to get them. It's a ticking time bomb with the groupies, and the Tornadoes can move minions around until you're ready to do the big groupie play. So move someone over here, move a minion with them, drop all the groupies, repeat the process. There's so much to like about this combination. And we've talked a lot about card draw, and the Tornadoes really need card draw to make sure they get to their 3 powerful specials. It's hard to think of a faction that has better card draw than the Rockstars.
Moving straight into the top 3 now, our number 3 seed is Alien Grannies, which I think would be very, very spooky.
Yeah, that's not an image you want in your head at all. But we've talked about how the aliens are extremely powerful in 2 players with the invader bouncing. One of the problems with the aliens, though, is that they can only stall the game. They can't really draw cards or search for the specific ones that they want. But the grannies can. They can help cycle through your deck so they stand a better chance of getting to your invaders. And I feel like if you can find your invaders and find the cards that will repeat them, then it's going to be game owner, because it's just going to be about VP farming at that point. You don't even have to worry about the bases. The alien actions can stall. The grannies also have cards that can regenerate the aliens and put them back on top of your deck and just affect your discard pile. This one, you better beat them quickly or you're not going to win at all.
All right. Now this one was also Turning Jedi's bottom pick and greatest deviation, and all he had to say about that was someone had to be last. It was a very hard choice.
Yeah, I don't think that they're last at all.
All right, so moving along, we have in our number 2 position, the Samurai Mad Scientist. And again, this was someone's greatest deviation, but let's hear from you first.
So this combination just works so well with each other. The Mad Scientists actually have reasons to start destroying minions, and the Samurai have reasons to actually be destroyed. So that's a very natural pairing there. The Mad Scientists will use a lot of power counters, which are great because the Samurais will want power counters. Particularly Bushi, who can get to power 5 and give you an extra VP. There's a lot of card draw from the Samurai, which helps because the Mad Scientists need it. There's extra plays, there's destruction, there's specials at the last second that the mad scientists need. This is just a synergistic pairing, and it doesn't surprise me that they're number 2. The greatest deviation did surprise me, but there's a good reason for it.
All right, yeah, there is a good reason. This is Kilburn's greatest deviation at number 21, and he simply said he just doesn't have very much experience with the samurai.
But the fact that the deviation is at 21 shows just how close people were on, but not nearly as close as number 1.
All right, and that number 1 pick is the Robot Ignobles.
So what do you do with robots? This is the hardest thing. Robots are going to be strong with almost anything, and you can play robots with basically blank cards, and they're still going to do okay. So we wanted to pair them with someone who was on the weaker side, but Ignobles is probably the wrong choice because there are still a lot of synergies. This was my number 1 pick and the number 1 seed, and I believe this is also Chucky's Cookie's number 1 pick.
That's right.
And we'll hear what he has to say, but for me, the Sneaky Squires are just those extra minion plays that the robots want. The robots have a ton of minions that you have no problem giving away or blowing up. With the Ignobles, they're just so fast and so many extra plays that, again, you're going to have to beat this faction quickly or have a way to really hamper them, either with Destruction or Eliza so that you can only play 1 card per turn. This is definitely going to be depending on whether or not they'll get a counter pick.
All right, like Jim said, that was Chucky's Cookie's top pick as well, and here's what he had to say about it. The top pick was an easy decision for me. Robot Ignobles really stood out for me. Robots on their own are a top faction, potentially the very best individually, and they have a fitting partner with Ignobles. The Sneaky Squires that you mentioned offer additional burst and are especially helpful because they can give you another generic extra play after a Zap bot. At the same time, the Power 1 microbots let you use Repaying Debts or Ant of Drakes with almost no setback. The one danger I view for them are combinations that destroy lots of Power 2 minions, such as the Shark Truckers. But I think that there's no other combination on the list that can match their power output if they're played in big bursts. And they'll potentially be among the fastest to get through their deck as well.
So this is really interesting because we didn't know how the fairing, when we picked all of our number 1s, we didn't know what was going to be number 32 and who they were going to be paired against. And as it turns out, they're going to be paired against Kaiju Innsmouth. And the Kaiju do have a card that can blow up a lot of minions of low power on one of their base actions. And they have a card that can blow up a base. So if you can get Gorgonzola and blow it up, you can completely wreck. So it's not quite a counter pick, but it's going to be really interesting. That's going to be one of the games to watch, that first 1 versus 32.
Very interesting. Well, there may be some upsets yet.
Yeah, but I wouldn't blame you if, you thought Robotic Nobles were going to go the distance because it's not even close in terms of the number of points between them and number 2. This is just too hard to pick to pass up. And it's going to come down to the counter pick.
All right, fantastic. Well, do you want to tell us anything else before we head out?
Just a reminder to make sure to vote on your bracket. It's going to be important because the earlier you vote, that's going to actually be a tiebreaker. We didn't want to go crazy with the tiebreaker. We wanted to err on the side of simplicity. So the first tiebreaker is going to be who picked the larger round victory. So if you pick something and it wins in round 4 or 5, that's going to be a tiebreaker in the unlikely event of a points tie. And then after that, it's going to be based on when you actually submitted your bracket. So hopefully this gives you ideas. You can practice on the mock bracket. And then when it comes to be February 11th, the bracket will go live at 1 o'clock, and we look forward to your submissions. I'm really excited for this, and I hope that all of you enjoy it.
All right, fantastic. Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. Join us for March Smashness here on Crank It Up and also at marchsmashness.com. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sarah. Let's shut it down.